There is a test, somewhere in the dark between the stars, that determines whether a species is worth keeping alive. It is not a test of strength. It is not a test of intelligence. It is a test of endurance, of how long a thinking creature can hold its hand in a box of pain before it begs to die. 317 species have taken this test. 317 species have failed. And then, 4,000 years ago, the Galactic Medical Council met a species that didn't understand the rules. You may have heard of a test like this in a story told on a desert world, a small black box, a hand placed inside, a measure of whether a thinking creature is human or animal. This is not that story. This story is older. The species that passed this test did not have witches to train them. They did not have discipline. They did not have a prophecy. They were just farmers and mothers and tired old soldiers refusing to let go. This is the story of what happened in that chamber, what happened to the analyst who was sent to record it, and what the council has been quietly doing in every star system it touches ever since. It does not have a happy ending, but it does not have the ending you expect either. Before we go into the chamber, you have to understand what the Galactic Medical Council is. It is the oldest civilization in this arm of the galaxy, older than the dust of dead suns, older than memory itself. Its founders are not remembered, only its purpose. The purpose was always the same: to determine which species deserve to walk among the stars. The council never invaded. It never declared war. It never built an army worth the name. What it built was a chamber. A small, plain, white-walled chamber with a single chair in the center and a single small black box on a stand beside the chair. Anyone admitted to the chamber was instructed to place their hand inside the box. That was the entire test. The box did not contain a blade. It did not contain acid. It did not contain heat or cold or any weapon a body could be broken on. It contained a field, a precise, calibrated field of pure neural stimulation that produced, in the mind of any thinking creature, the sensation of every kind of pain that creature had ever evolved to feel: burning, freezing, drowning, bones breaking, children dying, mothers calling out names that would not be answered. The pain was not real. The body, when withdrawn from the box, would be unharmed, but the mind would not be unharmed. The mind would have been times there. Wherever times their times was. The instructions were simple. The subject would remain in the chair with their hand inside the box for as long as they could bear it. When they could bear no more, they would say a single word times, enough times, and the test would end. That was the threshold. And the council had spent 4,000 years measuring what the threshold revealed. What it revealed was this: every species, given enough pain and enough time, says time's enough. Every species has a number. The Velith broke at 1 hour, 11 minutes. The Kalorn broke at 4 hours and changed afterwards in a way their civilization never recovered from. Their poets stopped writing. Their cities slowly emptied, and 3 centuries later there were no Kalorn left at all. The Threnics lasted 11 hours but broke catastrophically, every subject losing the ability to think in the language of their own ancestors. The Iram broke at 16 hours and asked, on the way out, to be killed. The council recorded all of this. It filed all of this. It built a science around all of this. And from this science it drew a single, unshakable conclusion. A species that breaks easily cannot be trusted with the stars. A species that breaks slowly may be permitted to colonize one system under observation. A species that does not break at all has never existed. Until when the first human ship drifted into council space, it was not a warship. It was a colony vessel, old, slow, half broken from the journey. Its hull bore the names of its dead in scratched letters near the airlock, hundreds of names, in a dozen different scripts, layered over each other where new dead had been added on top of old dead. The council had never seen a ship that did that. The council scanned the vessel. The council studied it. The council retrieved the survivors, treated their wounds as was custom, and then summoned them, one by one, to the chamber. The first human selected was a 67-year-old farmer. His name was Aurelius. He had spent the journey tending the algae tanks that fed the ship's children. He had buried his wife in the void 6 months before the ship reached council space. He spoke 3 languages, all of them old, all of them earth-rooted. He limped on his left leg from a childhood accident that had never properly healed. The council studied his biology. They consulted their predictive models. They determined that a human male of his age, with his physiological markers, would say enough times in approximately 6 hours and 17 minutes. They placed him in the chair. They opened the box. They instructed him to put his hand inside. He did, and then he started humming. At first, the analyst thought it was distress. Some species vocalized when the pain began. The Velith had moaned in pitches their language could not transcribe. The Kalorn had wept in a way that sounded like rain on glass. The Threnics had bitten through their own translation collars trying to speak. But Aurelius was not in distress. He was humming a tune. The analyst, and you can call him Marcus, because that was his name. And because this is his story, Marcus Vesh, third-tier analyst of the House of Records, watched from behind the observation panel and recorded his first observation in the formal council script. Subject 0001H is humming. Tone analysis suggests a learned melodic pattern, possibly a coping ritual. Estimated breaking time unchanged, 6 hours, 17 minutes. 6 hours passed. Aurelius was still humming. 12 hours passed. Marcus leaned closer to the panel. He flagged a Tier 1 adjudicator. The adjudicator reviewed the data and ordered a recalibration of the predictive model. No human had been tested before, she said. Adjust the baseline. The subject will break shortly. 24 hours passed. The adjudicator returned. She watched Marcus through the panel. She did not speak for a long time. Then she said, "Bring in another one. We are missing something." The second human they brought to the chamber was a young woman named Yuki. She was 23 years old. She had been a teacher on Earth before the colony's departure. She had a thin scar on her chin from a fall she had taken at the age of 9. Her file noted that she had lost both parents in the same year. Her file noted that she had still graduated at the top of her class 6 months later. She entered the chamber. She sat. She placed her hand in the box. And then she started speaking. Marcus leaned forward. The translation collar caught the first words and rendered them into council speech. Mayor, Daphid, Bethan, Owen, Katrin, Alid, Cyan, Linos. The adjudicator looked at Marcus. What is she doing? Marcus scrolled through her file. Then he understood. She is naming her family. She's dead. Her living, her teachers, her students, everyone she has ever loved. 6 hours passed. Sarah was still speaking. She had not repeated a single name. 8 hours passed. The list had grown to include the names of her students' parents and their parents' parents. 12 hours passed. She was naming neighbors, friends, the shopkeeper who had given her a sweet when she was 4, the doctor who had failed to save her father, the boy she had loved at 15 and never spoken to again. 18 hours passed. She was naming strangers, people she had seen once on a train, people whose faces she remembered but whose names she had never known, so she gave them descriptions instead. The woman with the red coat at the station in Cardiff, the old man who fed pigeons in the park, the child crying in the marketplace whose mother could not afford bread. Marcus stopped recording. He simply watched her. Then he went back to the first chamber. Aurelius was still humming. He had been in the box for 31 hours. They brought in the third subject. His name was Captain Esteban Reyes. He was 41 years old. He had served in 3 colonial conflicts. His file flagged him as the highest risk subject, military training, combat trauma, known psychological resilience. The council models predicted, with some confidence, that he might last 8 hours. Captain Reyes entered the chamber. He sat. He placed his hand in the box. He did not hum. He did not speak. He did not move. He simply stared at the wall. Marcus watched him for an hour, then 2, then 4, then 16. Captain Reyes did not blink more than was biologically necessary. He did not shift his weight. He did not turn his head. He did not breathe unevenly. Around the 32nd hour, the adjudicator asked, very quietly, "What is he doing?" And Marcus, who had been watching the captain's eyes for 32 hours, said, "I think he is calculating something." "Calculating what?" "I don't know, but the eyes are moving. Small motions. He is doing arithmetic, or memorizing a face, or counting something. He is somewhere else." The adjudicator was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Bring in all of them. Bring in every human we have. I want to see this." By the 40th hour, every one of the 23 human subjects was in a chamber. Everyone had a hand in a box. Everyone was somewhere else. Some hummed, some prayed, some recited poetry in dead languages, some described houses they had grown up in, room by room, paint chip by paint chip, smell by smell. Some held conversations with people who weren't there. Some told jokes nobody laughed at. Some wept quietly, without breaking, for hours. Some laughed quietly, without breaking, for hours. Not one of them said time's enough. By the 72nd hour, the council had convened an emergency session. Tier 1 adjudicators were summoned from 3-star systems. The predictive models were re-examined and found to be functioning correctly. The chambers were checked and found to be working perfectly. The boxes were inspected, the neural fields were verified. The pain was real. The pain was the same pain that had broken 317 species. The pain was, by every objective measurement the Council had developed in 4,000 years, unbearable. And the humans were bearing it. Marcus could not sleep. He sat in the observation chamber for the entire 4th day, watching Aurelius hum. Around the 90th hour, Aurelius changed his tune. Marcus recognized the new melody. He had spent enough time studying human cultures to know it. It was a lullaby. It was the kind of song a parent sang to a small child at night to keep the dark away. Marcus pulled Aurelius's file again. He read it more carefully this time. Aurelius had had a daughter. She had been born on Earth. She had died at the age of 4, of a disease that the Council Medical Archives could have cured in 12 minutes. He had been humming that lullaby for 90 hours. And Marcus, who had been a scholar all his life, who had recorded the breaking of 317 species, who had never once felt the temptation to step into a chamber himself, sat down on the floor of the observation room. He put his head in his hands. He did not move for some time. On the 5th day, Marcus requested permission to speak with the human envoy. The envoy was a small woman with gray hair and very tired eyes. She had been a doctor on Earth and a counselor on the colony ship, and now she was the one the council had agreed to negotiate with, though there were no negotiations, because there was nothing left to negotiate. Her name was Dr. Hanan Iyer. She did not look frightened. She looked, mostly, patient. Marcus sat across from her. He had prepared a list of questions. He did not ask them. Instead, he said, "Why are they not breaking?" Dr. Iyer looked at him for a moment. Then she said, very gently, "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" Yes, she thought about it. She did not rush. The humans, Marcus had noticed, never rushed when they had something important to say. They sat with the silence first, the way one sat with a guest. Finally, she said, "You think pain is what breaks people. Pain has broken every species we have ever tested. Pain isn't what breaks people. She let that sit. What breaks people, she said, is despair. Pain without meaning. Pain without an end you can imagine. Pain that you don't believe anyone will remember. She looked at the wall behind him, at nothing in particular. Every person in your chambers, she said, has already been somewhere worse than that box. Tomas buried his daughter in a colony with no medicine. He held her for 9 hours while she stopped breathing. Yuki watched her parents die in the same hospital in the same week and graduated from school 6 months later because they had asked her to. Captain Reyes lost his entire unit on a planet whose name nobody remembers and walked out of a forest alone, on foot, for 41 days. Every one of them. Every single one. We did not send you our soldiers. We did not send you our strongest. We sent you whoever was in the room when you arrived, and they are not breaking, because what you are doing to them is not new. It is just an old grief in a new room. Marcus did not move. We don't endure pain, Dr. Ayer said. We outlive it. That's what humans are. We are the species that outlived our pain. Every one of us, in every generation, all the way down, every single one of us is the descendant of someone who buried a child and got up the next morning and planted a field anyway. That is why we are here. That is why there is still anyone alive on Earth at all. She paused. If you keep them in the boxes, she said, they will die in the boxes. They will not say enough. They have already said enough once to a god or a graveyard or a dark room when they were children. They will not say it again to you. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, why did you come here? If you knew this about yourselves, why come to a galaxy that tests species this way? Dr. Ayer smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been asked, after a long journey, why they were tired. Because we have to go somewhere, she said. Earth is not a forever place. There is a forever place. We came here because there was room, and because we hoped you would be kind, and because we have always gone toward the next thing, even when we knew the next thing might kill us. She set down her cup. That is also what humans are. Marcus returned to the observation chamber. He gave the order to end the test. The humans were removed from the boxes. Their hands were intact. Their bodies were intact. Most of them said thank you to the medics. Some of them asked how long they had been in there. When they were told, none of them seemed surprised. Aurelius was the last one out. He was helped to a chair. Someone brought him water. He drank it slowly. Then he looked up at Marcus, who had come down into the chamber for the first time in his career, and he smiled. You looked worried, friend, Aurelius said, in the rough council dialect he had picked up in his 5 days of captivity. Was the test difficult for you? Marcus did not know how to answer. He filed his report that night. The report was 17 sentences long. It was the shortest report he had ever filed. The report read in summary, subjects, 23 humans, test, standard threshold protocol, predicted breaking time, 6 to 31 hours, depending on the subject, actual breaking time, none. Recommendation, the human species cannot be evaluated by the threshold. Recommendation, the human species should be removed from the testing schedule. Recommendation, future council contact with human worlds should be conducted with care and with the understanding that pain is not the lever that will move them. Recommendation, there may not be a lever that will move them. Recommendation, do not look for one. The Tier 1 Council read the report. They debated for 3 days, then they voted. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was removed from the testing schedule permanently. No species had ever been removed from the testing schedule before, not the Velith, not the Kalorn, not the Threnix, not even the Irem, who had asked to be killed. Every species that had ever been tested had been tested again, generations later, to see if it had changed. The threshold was meant to be eternal because the question it asked was eternal. But the council did not test humans a second time. They did not declare peace. They did not declare war. They did not announce anything. They simply closed the file. And the council, in every star system it touched, began very quietly, without ever saying why, to leave a small buffer of space between its borders and the worlds where humans lived. A zone of unmeasured void, a respectful distance from a question they had not been able to answer. Marcus lived for another 40 years after that. He retired from the House of Records. He moved to a small moon at the edge of council space, where the night sky was very clear, and you could see the lights of human colonies, distantly, like candles in a window across a long valley. He never tested another species. He could not. Something in him had shifted in that chamber, and he did not know how to shift it back, and after a while, he stopped trying. Mostly, he read. He read everything humans had ever written that had been translated into council speech. He read their poetry first, then their histories, then their religions, then their letters home from wars. He read for 40 years, and at the end of it, he understood almost nothing more than he had understood on the first day. But he understood it better. In his 89th year, an old human poet came through the system on a passenger ship. She had been a friend of Dr. Ayer's many years ago. She was traveling to see her granddaughter on a colony 3 jumps away, and she had a layover of 2 days on Marcus's moon, and someone arranged for them to meet because someone remembered that Marcus had once been the analyst at the threshold. She was very old. She walked with a stick. She drank a kind of human tea that smelled like burning grass. Marcus asked her one question. It was the question he had been carrying for 40 years. What is a human? She thought about it. She did not rush. She sat with the silence first, the way humans did. Then she said, a human is a creature that knows it is going to die and gets up in the morning anyway. Marcus wrote that sentence down in his journal that night. It was the last entry he made. He died in his sleep some months later, peacefully, on a moon that smelled of dust and old paper and the distant memory of grief. His journal was sent to the House of Records, as was custom. The council archivists read it. They debated whether to enter it into the formal record. They voted against it. The journal was instead placed in a small sealed container in the deepest vault of the archive with a tag in the old script that read, "Not to be tested, not to be opened, not to be forgotten." And the council went on testing species. The threshold remained eternal. Hundreds more were tested in the centuries that followed. Hundreds more failed. The number is now 461, last anyone counted, and rising. But there is still a buffer of space in every star system the council touches, between their borders and the worlds where humans live. A zone of unmeasured void, still respected, still kept clear, still uncrossed. Nobody alive in the council now remembers exactly why. They only remember that it was decided, a long time ago, by a tier of analysts who had seen something they could not put into a report. And the rule has been kept generation after generation, because some rules are kept not because they are understood, but because they were paid for in full by someone who is no longer here to explain. If you are human and you are listening to this, here is what I want you to know. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, an old civilization is afraid of you. Not because you are strong, not because you are clever, not because you have weapons, because you wake up in the morning, because you bury your dead and keep walking, because every time the universe has tried to break you, you have hummed a lullaby for a child who is no longer here and stayed. That is the test you have already passed. You passed it the day you were born. You pass it again every morning. And somewhere out there, in a vault on a quiet moon, in a sealed container that nobody is allowed to open, there is a journal that says, in the careful handwriting of a very old alien who watched you and did not understand, a human is a creature that knows it is going to die and gets up in the morning anyway. Get up tomorrow. That is the whole story.